On today's Star Wars Legends lore video, we designed the perfect base. Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to more Star Wars Legends lore. Say you have to protect the Emperor's secret storehouse or his stash of reserve clone bodies. What do you do to defend against a dangerous galaxy? We'll talk about that today. Today's video is sponsored by the fine folks over at the EckhartsLadder Twitter. Want to keep up to date on new videos and live streams, interact with me, and hear my crazy musings? Make sure to follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/EckhartsLadder. So we've been talking about warfare a lot for the past few weeks. Today we'll be synthesizing all of that information and seeing how it plays out in a practical way. We're going to imagine that, like the Empire, we have a near infinite defense budget and we have a place that needs to be protected above all else. The first step would be choosing the proper location. We see the Empire use the Maw and the Deep Core to protect some of their most valuable assets. We're going to want to do so here. However, I also think it's key that we find a full-sized planet, perhaps with a couple of moons, but things like asteroids or a stellar anomaly that messes up ships' sensors would be a big bonus. This, however, won't be my focus because sometimes you can't choose the planet you need to protect. What you can choose, however, is a defensive fleet. Now, the fleet guarding this planet will be supported by orbital and ground-based weapons and installations, so we have a bit of flexibility when it comes to fleet composition. For example, I would focus on heavy capital ships and corvettes. I wouldn't worry about carriers, for example, because starfighters can be launched from the planet and more directly from hangars. I would definitely want a few big, slow, bulky ships because your goal here is to protect the planet, not to chase down pirates. However, it would also be important that this fleet is well supported in orbit. I would want a mix of golan defense platforms, fighter hangars, repair yards, and other smaller weapons platforms. The repair platforms would sit beyond the battle lines, would serve an obvious purpose, but would allow the planet to remain somewhat self-sufficient. If the planet had a nearby asteroid field or other mineral source, you could also produce your own ships, which would allow the planet to double as a shipyard. However, if we're focusing on protection, one of the most important assets would be the golan defense platforms. Golans are easily as powerful as capital ships and would really operate just to support the fleet in orbit. I would, however, make sure that these were outfitted with a higher than usual amount of laser cannons. The supporting fleet and the dreadnoughts, hopefully in orbit, should be packed to the brim with turbo lasers, and I really wouldn't want any starfighters getting by. Hangars would also be extremely important for quick starfighter response. I already said that I wouldn't include any carriers, they'd more or less just be a liability in the fleet, so I'd rely on docked fighters to provide a good deal of protection for my larger ships. Of course, most capital ships will have some fighters on board, but these hangars would really serve only that purpose. Let's now go planetside and take a look at our ground installations. One of, if not the most important aspects of planetary defense is the shield. You're going to want dozens, if not hundreds of shield generators if the world is important. This not only allows the shield to survive longer bombardments, but also gives the shield more flexibility. Portions can be moved around to create small gaps, allowing starfighters or ground-based weapons to attack ships in orbit. The other option would be to take down the entire shield, which is obviously not preferable. Speaking of weapons, I think you want a mix of ion cannons and projectile-based weapons. Both specialize in different areas. Of course, an ion cannon can disable a ship, and a projectile weapon can take down a shield, but they both excel in certain aspects. For example, hypervelocity cannons can burn out relatively quickly and need to be reloaded because they have to shoot so many projectiles to pop through a ship's deflector shield. Instead, imagine this. You have an ion cannon and a hypervelocity cannon very close together, probably protected by a local shield generator. The ion cannon shoots first, hitting an orbiting ship. Now, a small ship might be completely destroyed or disabled, but larger ones may be able to soak up the damage. However, regardless, the shield will be, if not destroyed, no longer functional. Firing with only a slight delay is the hypervelocity cannon. Now the ship has no particle shields, and the weapon just goes straight through. Set up a few dozen of these pairings, which would be expensive but realistic, and I think you can protect your planet from a pretty strong force. It'd be nice to also have a few heavy ground-based turbo lasers. They probably wouldn't do as much damage, but it never hurts. And this shows us the importance of having a flexible shield. You'd have to coordinate really heavily with these gun stations, but you could just open very small parts without having to worry about sacrificing defensive integrity. That being said, you still need to defend the planet's surface. I would use turbo laser towers, anti-aircraft weapons, as well as speeders, atmospheric starfighters, and of course a standing army. Moving back into space, one of the reasons why I said a moon would be something to look out for when choosing a planet, if you have the ability to, is because you can use it kind of like the Death Star did, as a secondary shield generator. You could also, of course, build secondary defensive structures, ion cannons, starfighter hangars, etc., etc. Although, of course, this depends on the moon's orbit and how close together everything is. Finally, let's talk about general defensive strategy. Obviously, you want to keep the planet completely hidden. This means having it fully militarized, keeping the location a secret, and only allowing your top officers to actually visit or have knowledge of its whereabouts. However, you'd still have to prepare for the fact that the location could be leaked and develop a strong defensive perimeter. One important thing is making a choke point. Now, obviously it sounds difficult to make a choke point in 3D space, but it seems like in the Star Wars universe, it's fairly easy to predict how ships will approach a planet. This is likely due to gravity and hyperspace lanes. For example, the Trade Federation aren't shown blocking the entire planet of Naboo, but rather one approach. I'd use this knowledge along with interdictor technology to really define this choke point and have a good portion of my weapons pointed in that direction. If you have the ability or the technology to set up some sort of laser grid, then you could also place that in the choke point, quickly destroying any jumped ships. But that's just my opinion and my perfectly defended planet. Did I miss anything? What would you include? And in the comments, let me know what you would name this sort of sanctuary planet. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, this has been EckhartsLadder. May the Force be with you.